So it's my great pleasure to introduce Shelley Bell. Shelley, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, David. This is awesome. I'm Shelley Bell. I'm the founder of Black Girl Ventures. We work to create access to capital for Black and Brown women founders. We focus on three areas: capital, capacity, and community. We stand out a little unique because we figured out a way to kind of circumvent the financial system and circumvent investors to an extent. And we created a competition that includes the community actually donating their dollars. So women pitch on stage, and the audience members, and now the global community of people watching can actually dig into their own pockets and vote with their dollars. And then that capital goes out to the founders. And so we've been able to use that to create really strong deal flow to be able to find those Black and Brown women founders out there for our like different investment partners that we may work with. And it's been awesome. We usually do 7 or 8 cities. This year we're doing 6. It's all virtual. We have a proprietary software called SheRaise, which is a pitch competition management system where we bring in the dollars and a donation and the feedback for the entrepreneurs who are pitching.
So there are so many aspects of Black Girl Ventures that I think are really cool. And I first saw this when you presented at Venture Cafe in Philadelphia and was really inspired. But let me try to break out a few of them. One is the alternative access to capital. So can you talk a little bit about rent parties and the roots of the program and what that means? Because I think that I certainly believe there are a lot of entrepreneurs that don't have ready access to the venture club, that have grit and brains and hustle and deserve or will provide great return on funding. And so how do you do that?
Yeah. So the premise of what we built, as David spoke of, is the rent party, which is historical. So in African American communities during the Great Migration, Black people migrated to Harlem, and white landowners raised the rent, and so Black people threw what's called a rent party in their basement to stay in their homes. And these were not just any kind of parties. You had some of the African American greats like Fats Waller, Langston Hughes, Duke Ellington actually helping with these parties. They had little cards with rhyming words on them for admission. And it was all about how do we bring in community to help people fight against adversity, really. And so when I thought about what we could do, so while we wait for the financial system to become more equitable, right? Like, because that fight is happening. And while we wait for the investor community to become more equitable, even considering, the SEC's new ruling on other ways that you can become an accredited investor, which I think will change the game for people out there who are watching and ready to move into this space. So I think we're going to see more women VCs, more Black women of color VCs come along, and I'm excited about that. In the meantime, what are we gonna do, right? So like people are still starting businesses, still running them. Black women pre-COVID were starting businesses at 6 times the national average, yet receiving less than 1% of venture capital. The wealth gap, so Black families have 1/10 of the wealth that a white family has. And so when we look at those dynamics, and a lot of that honestly coming from history, we're seeing we have so many ways to study and produce and see all this data now, but ultimately this has been building over years. The problem has been compounding on top of itself over years. And when we think about the future of what we're going to see the way history has played out, right? And so my thing was, okay, got it. What could we do right now to, in my opinion, we need a wormhole of sorts, right? where like how can we cut time in half? Because really we're what we're up against is time. Like I do believe change is and will happen, but we're up against time. So how do we create that friends and family round now, considering the wealth gap? How do we create low barrier access to capital now, considering the need for a more equitable society coming, on the horizon, I would say. And I have hope that, regardless of whatever happens, election wise, or that I have hope that we are moving toward a more equitable society just because people are becoming more conscious. So my thought is, well, what could we do? What could we do in the meantime? And what could we do? We can get more people involved.
Right.
We can actually have the community have an opinion, right? We put everything else into the court of social media opinion, right? So then everybody's got their opinions on everything about everybody's lives. So why not throw in this part? Whereas like for a founder who does not have a friends and family round to receive $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 and feedback, by the way. So they're also getting consumer feedback. So this is potentially your customer that they're talking to. They're in front of, we call them champions, but they're also in front of judges who are business leaders and investors and entrepreneur support organization leaders. So they're getting feedback from people who will be experts at what they do, but also directly from a customer, which you also don't necessarily get when you're participating in other competitions. So, my thought was just like, what could we do? And what kind of things that have been studied, tried and true, like the Rent Party, were out there to actually create a new effect or impact on Black women business owners, Black and brown women business owners.
So this is a triple threat kind of deal where you're getting crowdfunding and you're getting so Wormhole is way high tech and cooler than OnRamp, which is what I usually say. But OnRamp, and you're getting a feedback loop from both professionals and consumers. So I think this is a really exciting platform for people that don't have rich friends, right? The friends and family and founders, fools round is usually, find the rich person, and that's great if you know rich people, but otherwise, do you think that this model can be extended to other countries and other communities?
I do. So to talk about like more of even the bigger picture of programming that Black Girl Ventures has, we do have a community platform where we have women from all over the world, in fact, who are participating in just like direct business services. So technical assistance, actual like feedback, co-working, pitch practice, direct coaching, peer mentoring. And the way I look at the crowdfunding piece is we could potentially be crowdfunding any resource. Mm-hmm. This could be agricultural capital. This could be, looking for people to intern or work with you, or looking for, we could potentially do this kind of thing in so many different ways that I think that, yes, we are looking at what it would look like to be in other countries. So I think there is the capital piece, and there's the ease of access to capital, people who care about that. Especially if you're considering in countries where like the woman is not allowed to work, may not be allowed to ask for certain kinds of capital. Yes. She's already fighting against a system that doesn't allow her certain rights. She can't go get a bank account, right? So considering that in countries where women can't have their own bank account still to this day, imagine that they could get easy access to capital to build their company or build on their skills from the community.
Can you talk a little bit about your outreach to, I'd say, underserved capital markets? So I know you've been doing a tour, not to Silicon Valley, but to places that are not swimming in venture capitalists and dense angel networks. How has that gone, and how have you attacked that segment of the market?
Yeah, great question. So interestingly enough, a lot of how we have grown has been word of mouth, but it's a very intentional word of mouth. So let's take Philly, for example. Entering into Philly, so I learned from entering into Baltimore that cities that are under-resourced and even majority minority or majority poverty or near the poverty line, those cities, you can't just walk up into those cities. Right. Like, you don't just go into Baltimore and be like, oh yeah, we're doing a thing in Baltimore. Like, that is not how it works. Baltimore, Philly, Detroit, these are not cities that you can just walk up in. So we when I went going into Philly, one of the ways we entered was actually I made some connections, and my business partner at that time and we went up and we did a day of meetings with everyone that was a potential were participating in the ecosystem that we could. Yeah. And we just told them what we had. Hey, this is what we've been doing in DC. We think we did it in Baltimore a couple of times. We think it could work here. What do you think? Yeah. And we actually let them have an opinion on it. And everyone was like, yes. You know, we met with the Enterprise Center. We met with Ben Franklin Tech Partners. We met with people at WeWork. We met with, like, we were meeting with people from different aspects of the ecosystem. And they were like, yeah, we think it could work. Like, yes, we think this could be a thing. And they identified their own challenges, which was bringing people from different sides of the city. And so the power of that conversation gave us really great insight on how to enter. So we expanded into more of a chapter model where we work with women on the ground. So right now we have 5 chapters, and we have 3 to 5 women in those cities who work with women, who work with Black Girl Ventures who are on the ground. Right. And they're the next level of ambassador, right? So they're not only are they like spreading the word, but they actually, we exalt them as leaders in their own community. Sure. And you're building the network density. Building a network, covering them in media, supporting, figuring ways to support them as entrepreneurs, whatever resources we can get to them or courses or that we can get to them. Putting them in the position to work with larger partners like Google. Yeah. Putting them in position to be able to meet different people that they may not even usually meet in their own markets. And so what I learned from this experience is that leadership, amplifying other leaders to really create a solid ecosystem build is the key. Well, I was very impressed in Philly. Not only did you pack a big room, but when I was working the crowd, that's probably overstating it. When I was mingling with the crowd before the event, it was a lot of first timers to Venture Cafe and new faces. And so you were really growing participation in the ecosystem, which is what this is all about for VC++. Can you talk a little bit about if I'm in a city that doesn't have a chapter today, what should I think about if I want to start a chapter? What do you look for in a chapter director, and go with that? Yeah. We look for your people skills. I know like that probably wouldn't be the answer that like a corporate person would give, but because I truly believe that it is the energy of the people exchange that really is building the ecosystem. You can drop in some investors, you can drop in some corporations, you can drop in a couple institutions, academic institutions, and nothing happened. Right. Right? Like, it's like, oh yeah, it's great that y'all are here, but those things don't look like they're for everybody. And I think this is the thing that some of the corporations and different partners may or may not understand at first is like, you with all the great work that you're doing, don't look like you're for everybody. And the best way to do that is through partnership. Like we can't stand alone, look like we're for everybody either. We have to work together with partners. So a lot of it is about, we do interviews. So there's an application process, you apply. You do go through an interview process. We look for people skills. We look for being a team player. We look for our core values, which are like diplomatically radical, which means like knowing how to play the game and being about what you are about are both a thing, right? Yeah. It's not a just play the game and don't be who you are, and it's not a jump off a cliff and tell everybody you don't have to be you don't have to blow up the building. Right? That's right. You don't have to blow up the building, and you also don't have to fabricate and not be who you are. Yeah. There is a medium, and we believe that that's there, right? And so we look for a lot of soft skills. We do care that you do have some business experience. You can be a corporate employee. We do like to have entrepreneurs, but it's good to have a balance of both in a chapter because 3 to 5 women. And so if the majority of them do have control over their time, it is easier for us to work with them. Now,
Yeah.
as we move into 2021, we are so glad to announce that our chapter experience will look a little different. So
Okay.
prior to moving into 2021, it was all volunteer. However, we have secured funding for different markets, and we are turning it into more of a fellowship style opportunity. Therefore, the people who are participants will have an opportunity to actually receive a stipend for
Nice.
their participation. And with that, they're going to have the opportunity to assess their own market. They're going to assess, think of, and then insert activities. And then we're going to study and create a report around what was there, what wasn't there, what needs to be there in order to really set these ecosystems up to keep thriving with us, or if we decide to pull out.
Sure.
But I think one of the things I want to be additive about, first thing is do no harm in the market. Second thing is how can we add and support what's already happening there and just really hype it
Right.
so that we can create more access to it. And then what does that look like for people to be able to carry that on?
So I have two different follow-up questions. The first one is, what kind of metrics do you apply as you enter those markets to look at what it means to have a successful launch in a city, and how do you describe the impact of your moving the needle?
Yeah, so we have what's called a city viability rating, and so we look at demographic before entering. We look at demographics, we look at entrepreneurial activity, and we look at whether or not the city has made any type of claims around what it wants to do with entrepreneurship. So has the mayor's office released any announcement? Has the state itself, has the state even stepped forward to say what they want to do for entrepreneurs? We also take a look at the number of academic institutions that could be there, because we want them to have really great access to knowledge. In terms of, and then as we are in the city, we look at how many partners were we able to acquire, how many people are we actually engaging, and then how are we connecting, right? So not just how many people are connecting with Black Rock Ventures, but how many people are we connecting either to each other from a peer standpoint and to our partners, institutions. So we really look at ourselves as that on-ramp. So how can we create the strongest on-ramp possible, so that, because the highway is over here moving around and people are like, I didn't know what to do, right? So it's like, here's the place to on-ramp, here's the place to exit. So that's how we look at it. Ongoing, we do measure how engaged the institutions are and the partners are. Like I said, we do continue to measure if the building of the community is happening. Are more people getting engaged year over year? Are the chapter leaders themselves able to actively engage the community? Because there's so many different things happening in these communities, right? Like being in Birmingham, Alabama is nothing like being in Houston, Texas.
Right.
And so we have to look at how are we call them change agents able to assert themselves, and get the market kind of moving. Our measurement of how we move the needle has a lot to do with activity, funding, and investment. So if we want our people, if we want our community, our women in the market, our women, we don't own them, but we want our constituents to have grown enough to be able to hire contractors or employees. We want them to have connected with 2 to 3 new sources that they weren't connected with before, whether that is peer mentors or institutions or other accelerators and incubators. We want them to have gained more confidence, and this is one of the more soft skills on like confidence in business and growing. We look at supplier diversity. So like, have they been able to secure larger vendor opportunities so they can keep their business going? And those are a few that we look at.
That's awesome. Brad Feld, who does work on Startup Community, has been vocal in saying every community of 100,000 people or bigger should have its own startup ecosystem. And I think it's an exciting time for markets that traditionally were overlooked, that combined represent millions and millions of people, not just in the US, but around the world. So the things you're doing, I think, are very cutting edge. Can you talk a little bit about how you bring corporate and governmental bodies along with you on the journey, right? So not everybody's at the same level of awareness on the issue, let's put it that way, right? So how do you work with sourcing those that are at the leading edge, and how do you help those that aren't there yet to get there?
It's a lot of conversations, David. I mean, round tables, panel discussions, one-on-ones. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of like, they understand data. So when you can speak data to them, here's the number of people that we're serving, here's how many people funded, here's what they did once they were funded, here's what, like, that's what they understand. The challenge though with that is that there's just not enough data on, I'll say, Black founders in present. So there's not enough data on underrepresented founders when it comes to women of color in general. Yep. And there's just not enough data on Black founders in particular. There's not been enough time to gather it, right? Yep. So we have to, unfortunately, in order to be able to push through to government connections and even to corporations, we have to be able to like build and speak about what we're building at the same time. Yes. Which actually could present a challenge for entrepreneur support organizations that have not been around for 10 plus years, right? So like this is we're going into our 4th year, and on my own founder journey has just learned some lessons, right? About building a company like this. Now I built other companies, but building this kind of company was a different ball game. And so now we are having to make sure that we are measuring enough to tell the story and have the conversation. So to be honest with you, it's speaking in data, speaking their language. Number one, as a Black founder, understanding their language, right? So you got to spend time doing that. And then once you can understand that, then you move into actually speaking their language. And once you're speaking their language, they feel like we're all having the same conversation. Even though like you wish you could move them like 10 steps forward, you just start having the conversation that makes sense to them around like impact, metrics, data evaluation, timing, capital. They start to understand you start to understand each other a little better.
So just to follow up on that, can you give me and the audience advice on how corporate anchor companies in communities or governmental institutions that are trying to build the entrepreneurial ecosystem can make take best advantage of what you do? What's your advice to them about how to make the ecosystem more inclusive?
Yeah. Capital, community, and capacity. And so when I think about that, I think you can always lead with your dollars, right? So you can always and lead, but I think there's a way to lead with your dollars with integrity that is not about like just being performative. Yeah. But there are ways to lead with your dollars where you actually want to see impact. Mm-hmm. Right. And you can do that in a way where like we agree, like I agree with the corporations that are about the impact that we want to see. And that is a partnership, and it's not, it's not like I said, it's not performative, and it's not just like, oh, we threw some money at it, so we got it, right? But we have been, and lately, in response to Black Lives Matter, we've gotten such an influx of partnerships. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure, just from some friends of mine, everyone around the country who was either doing racial equity work or working with underrepresented founders also received like an influx of attention and conversation and things like that.
And do you feel that will raise the water level on a permanent basis?
I do. So the people that have been coming to us, I can only speak for the people who have come to us. The people who have come to us feel they are really about doing it, and even like the companies that came to us, like people like Warby Parker, we've connected with Visa, we've connected with Vogue Clicquot, PayPal, eBay.
Great.
So they have.
I had another speaker who was like, you know, the question is, oh, you care about this issue. Tell me what you're doing with money and time, right? And
there you go.
sort of, and that separates the performative folks from the real deal efforts.
And money and time together.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So like the people that I named, we're working on like corporate mentoring, right? We're working on like your employees come and review decks. Like we're working on, and we're pressing them on multi-year agreements. So, you know, thank you for your nice, you know, the nice drop in the hat. And that was great. And
right.
what we're going to do next year, you
That's
know,
right.
like, so we are pushing them to make multi-year commitments. So I would say, you know, we're still actively raising. We want to, the software that we built, we want to continue to develop it into being a really robust mentoring and capital providing platform. So I would say that like that is a way we're still looking for partners, still looking for more capital to really build that software out.
On the platform, can you take me through the journey if I'm a Black woman founder, which obviously I'm not, but you know, if I was, what do I do to register on the platform and put my company forward, and what are the steps?
Yeah, so first things first, to be on the platform currently, you have to apply to be a part of pitch competition. So go to blackrockventures.org, apply to be a part of pitch competition. We review those on an ongoing basis. So we have a couple of capital activities currently on our website. Capital opportunities on our website. So we're partnered with the Bumble Fund, who is actively investing in women who are solving problems that affect women. And so you can actually apply to be submitted to the Bumble Fund on our website right now. You can also apply to be a part of the Black Rock Ventures pitch competition, and which will land you on the SheRaise platform. And so once you are selected, so we do go through a vetting process. We do look at all according to the cities that we're launching in. If you are a founder who has a beauty company, we are launching the first national Black Rock Ventures competition, which will be centered around beauty founders. The applications are open right now. And so go ahead, get in, apply. We'll be looking at those soon to close that out. So first you would apply, get into a competition, and then you go onto the site and the back end registers you and all of that. If you're looking to vote or find more companies though, you can go to www.sheraise.com. You can see what is all of the competitions that are live. You also can look at browse founders and take a look at all the founders that have come through over time.
Very cool. So let me close this with saying, if you had a last word for people that are looking to move the system towards greater inclusion, towards greater equity, what should they do? What's your last?
They should create, innovate, and participate.
Okay.
Because if you're not participating, you cannot study. I don't care how much you read or see online. If you're not active in some of these communities, you just cannot get the cultural competence necessary to actually move the needle.
So get in the game. Get in the game
and get creative. Like where's all the innovation? Like where are people coming up with the back door and the side door and the thing we can do? Like one of the things that out of all the not so great things, I'm looking forward to the quarantine bringing out innovation. Innovation around gathering, innovation around activating people, ecosystem building. Where are we with that? So innovate, get creative. If you're not creative, bring in some creative people and match up your left brain and right brain folks and like really dig in there and say, what hasn't happened yet? Because the reality is nobody has the answer. There's no silver bullet to this. Therefore, that means there's so much room to innovate.
I love it. Shelly, thank you so much for your time and your insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.